Do you remember Courtenay at that time? Can you describe
Yeah,
it?
Courtenay was a much smaller town than it is today. Uh, the downtown area is still very very similar to what it was then. Basically, it hasn't had any redevelopment. Uh, Surrounding the downtown core, of course, there's a humongous amount of development. I think the residential sprawl of Comox is transformed that neighborhood, which was at one time basically forested and country, and is now very suburban in feel, really. And some of the homes are very impressive. They're no longer little hippie cottages somebody built in the forest.
Do you, basically, the fair was a blown up version of 907 McPhee, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know what 907 McPhee is.
That was the joint, the place where we all hung out, the building we had.
Oh, the building itself. Basically, it was that. Yeah, it was those people that were there put on the fair, and we all pitched in to put it on. We all pitched in to build the stage, and there wasn't one single person that was like, I think, there were people that played certain roles, and it went off. And I thought it went off really well.
Do you remember that we had recycling and things like that?
It was a real a revolutionary idea at that time to have recycling bins and where people would separate their garbage. This was a radical concept.
And we had it.
And we did it, yeah.
At the fair site.
At the fair site for the first time. And people were, oh, wow.
There's
Now it sounds so trivial, I just don't even want to talk about it. What do you mean? I just put out my recycling this morning.
Yeah, now that was one of the great things about the fair, wasn't it? We were trying new things.
That's right. Yeah, and there was a certain environmental consciousness to it all, and it's really, I think that was really good.
If you go to a fair today, you don't see much politics.
Very little, actually.
But there was politics at that fair, wasn't there? As far as like we were.
Well, the only politics was that it was a group of society that was perhaps in a minority at that time in the valley, because the valley historically is, composed of, people who were either loggers or fishing or, not to mention coal mining in the old days. But, in today's, at that time there was a new influx of residents that brought with them different ideas and different ways of and wanting to create something as well. I think that was part of it. That you were part of something that was happening and new.
Well, the thing I remember is like Greenpeace had a booth and
Yeah.
these different.
Well, that was a bit of politics for sure.
Yeah.
The Greenpeace, but then that was very okay. I think it was when they were basically just beginning to some extent.
And the craftspeople too did demonstrations. Do you remember the weavers? And
There was all that. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it all too much. Cause
pretty busy.
yeah, well, and handling all the money, because we got a lot of money coming in that we weren't expecting to see huge amounts of money. So we had, I think the fellow's name was Gordon. Yeah, he would run these bundles of cash to the bank to deposit them.
Do you remember what the admission fee was?
I just can't remember, but it wasn't a lot. It was like a couple of bucks or something.
It was $2.
Yeah.
So it was a small budget thing by today's standards, right?
It was very small budget. The bands got paid in cash at the end of the gig. Everybody loved it.
And we had to scrounge for the infrastructure, didn't we?
Well, there was really very little infrastructure. We got some of for the stage itself was built with just recycled material found in fields, basically, here and there, some plywood, and then like you talked about the fencing surrounding, and that was basically the infrastructure. Put together an entrance gate or something. But but there were other people there that were very instrumental. There was a lady with me that helped a lot. Her name was Rena Wilcox. I don't know if you remember her. She was very instrumental in handling the gate, actually, and taking care of the money as it came in. Because we had two gates, and there was, once you started getting a few $100, so she went around. They collected it all, counted. We sat in the back of her little Volkswagen van and counted it, and we'd send Gordon off to the bank.
Do you remember how hard we worked to preserve the park in the aftermath?
Well, to a little bit, yeah, I remember, yeah. I remember going there one day myself and doing something, picking up bits or something.
And we worked very hard to leave our space as we found it.
No, that was part of the philosophy, was to, be caring for the space that you're using. I think that exists today with like for example, the Vancouver Folk Festival. Everybody's big on cleaning up afterwards.
To move on a bit, after the fair that you did, things changed a lot, didn't they?
Well, I imagine, but you see, I wasn't living in the valley then anymore. I moved back to Vancouver, basically almost to this house, and where I've lived ever since. So.
But you came up each year and did some recording.
I did for a couple summers afterwards. I came up because I was involved with a group here called Video In at that time as well. So I had access to equipment. And, for a couple of years, I went up there and shot a couple things with old Portapacks, which is pretty antique today. With your smartphone video.
So it must have been quite a shock to you to see the change from the little fair that you organized to what happened in the exhibition grounds.
Well, I don't know if it was a shock. It was a natural evolution of something that was culturally required. The population of the island is increased. The demographics of it have changed, and continue to. People are still going to the island. And look at the growth of Courtenay today. You have Walmarts and Canadian Tires where where you have forest and somebody's little shack.
So today in the Comox Valley, there's three major events. One is the Philburg Festival.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the Islands Music Fest, which is held on that exhibition site that we helped to develop. And the third one is the Comox Valley Art Gallery,
Right.
which is a direct descendant of the Arts Alliance. Can you see a direct link between those events and the old fair and the Early Alliance?
Well, I think, like anything, there's a sequence of events, and a trail is always connected. So things don't happen without previous things happening, and they usually don't happen without the people to make them happen. So, someone has to, think of, well, we got to have an art gallery, or we have to have a festival, and then there have to be people that do it, and I think once they reach a certain stage, they have to have continuity, and that usually comes through the personnel or the organization in some way.
So a part of what was happening there, a lot of the people you actually worked with, like Larry and Ron and all these people, were Americans, weren't they?
There were quite a few Americans in the valley, as there were throughout the coast, because that was the era, of the Vietnam War, draft resistors, and a lot of them came here because a lot of the people that came here came up from California because of coastal and these things, and so they brought with them a lot of the that American energy of California, go get it kind of stuff.
And so a lot of it was based on immigration at that time, somewhat.
Well, I don't know what the exact numbers were, but there were quite a few for sure. Yeah.
And the Arts Alliance itself was funded through small grants, right?
It got some grants from various government levels, and I think well, there was always talk when I was there, getting more grants and getting more established, because unfortunately arts need government funding.
So in today's world,
They always have. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, even here in Vancouver and throughout, Canada, if it wasn't for the various arts council grants, and Canada Council grants, there'd be a lot less art and culture.
I think what I'm trying to get at there is like before today we hear a lot about illegal immigrants.
Right.
And we also hear a lot about how we shouldn't be funding the arts. Like the government's always going after the CBC and they're always cutting arts funding. But if you look back, it was a bunch of quasi-illegal immigrants and some small funding that created an art scene that today is a major economic driver in that community. Can you see the link there?
I could say that a lot of the American draft resistors were catalysts that sparked, similar events across Canada. If you go to Toronto, and research the history of that area, you'll find the same sort of thing happening there. But they started things like universities. Rochdale comes to mind in Toronto as a college that was started by, basically draft resistors, and throughout wherever they were in Canada, I think they brought with them that energy and that that creativeness. But I think they were catalysts in a way, because they brought when you had all these people come to the fair, they weren't immigrants. They were the people that lived there, So they were just catalysts that created this, event and cultural awareness, basically.
So, would you think it's fair to say that they caused a bit of a cultural revolution in this country on some level?
I think it was the era. They were, like I say, the catalysts, but it was happening everywhere. It was happening in America for sure, big time. California, Washington State, Oregon. Look at Portland today.
When you think back to those days, when you remember the Renaissance Fair, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind is a lot of money. Really, because it seemed to me that that was just an amazing amount of money to make, and I could see that in the future there could be a potential source for funding for artistic endeavors, and and to support cultural venues like the Arts Alliance, and maybe even fund whatever other ideas would come up with that. It'd be like an art gallery.
When you think of the fair itself, like if you had a picture in your head of the fair itself.
Besides from, of course, the great time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it was a wonderful summer. It was beautiful, sunny, warm.
You don't.
Sort of the sun of my youth,
Well, there's did you take anything from your experience with the fair that helped you in your later career and in your later life?
Well, I just took with me it's always been with me. I've always thought back to the great times I've had there, and the fact that I was able to be part of it. Yeah, that's always been with me.